So you want to own a hospital in America. You envision wearing a noble white coat, hiring the world's top surgeons, and leaving behind a grand medical legacy that saves humanity. Sounds appealing, but you are dead wrong. Welcome to the bloodiest and most naked paradox of the American dream. The healthcare industry in this country is absolutely not a charitable organization meant to dispense mercy. Indeed, it is an extremely financialized money-printing machine worth $4.5 trillion, swallowing up over 17% of the GDP of the planet's #1 superpower. The greatest paradox lies in the fact that you are operating an empire equipped with the most cutting-edge technologies in the world, possessing the most brilliant medical minds in America, yet your business model is perfectly engineered to wipe out a 401k retirement account, foreclose on the mortgaged home of a hardworking middle-class family, and push them into absolute ruin over a simple appendectomy or an unexpected traffic accident. The seasoned wolves on Wall Street and massive investment fund managers do not pour tens of billions of dollars into acquiring hospital chains to find a definitive cure for cancer. It is incredibly cynical when people gradually realize that completely curing a person is actually a terrible financial move. The true nature of this game is to optimize a cold, calculating concept known as the revenue cycle. The pure operational costs of buying equipment or paying doctors' salaries are merely the tip of the iceberg. The immense cash flow your empire generates comes from the commercialization of human fragility. The more patients carrying premium insurance cards you can push through your emergency room doors, the more spectacular your quarterly financial reports submitted to the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, will look. But make no mistake, the line between extreme wealth and total ruin in this industry is as thin as a scalpel's edge. If you manage your cash flow naively, you will instantly get swallowed whole by giant insurance conglomerates and drown in a mountain of bad debt from thousands of patients who will never have the ability to pay their mile-long medical bills. Imagine you are a heavy-hitting player managing a notorious private equity fund in New York. You set your sights on a financially struggling community hospital and decide to acquire it, but using your own cash to fund the buyout is just a terrible and unsophisticated move. This is exactly when the magic trick, known as the leveraged buyout, LBO, is brought to the chessboard. You borrow $100 million from a bank to acquire this hospital, but instead of taking on the repayment yourself, you elegantly stuff that entire loan onto the accounting books of the very hospital you just bought. This zero-down maneuver allows you to own a massive medical facility without risking almost a single dime of your core capital. But the truly ruthless, hidden party is just getting started. That medical facility might be sluggish in terms of healthcare revenue, but the land and the building it sits on are pure gold. Ultimately, you did not buy the hospital to improve patient care. You bought it for its massive real estate portfolio. Immediately, you execute a classic financial surgical tactic called the sale-leaseback. You sell off the hospital's entire building and land to a real estate investment trust, REIT, such as the Giant Medical Properties Trust. Hundreds of millions of dollars in cash from this real estate sale instantly evaporate from the hospital and flow directly into your fund's pockets. You freely distribute hyper-profitable dividends to your shareholders, buy a few more private jets, and recoup your investment rapidly. What about the hospital's fate? Truly tragic. From the second it signs that land sale deed, it officially becomes a tenant on its very own land. Every single month, instead of using its hard-earned cash flow to upgrade MRI machines or raise salaries to retain nurses, the hospital must break its back, carrying exorbitant rent payments that run into the millions of dollars. If one day revenue drops, debt piles up, and the hospital goes bankrupt, your investment fund remains completely unscathed, because every ounce of debt risk has been perfectly isolated within the legal entity of that unfortunate hospital. Now, with the sale-leaseback trap you just set, you have a mountain of rent bills hanging over your head every single month. The life or death puzzle right now is, where do you squeeze the cash flow to fill that massive hole? Customers walking into your hospital are not like those walking into a Porsche showroom, where they have the right to look at the price tag and freely negotiate. Here, you possess the most dictatorial pricing privilege in America through a secret weapon, the Chargemaster matrix. Indeed, the Chargemaster is a top-secret internal master ledger where numbers are legally and recklessly inflated. Just look at the basic medical supply costs. A bag of sterile IV saline has a production and inventory cost of a mere $1, yet when hung on an IV pole and dripped into a patient's vein, it is magically transformed into $500, a profit margin markup reaching 50,000%. A Tylenol painkiller pill that costs 20 cents at a Walmart supermarket, when sitting on the plastic tray of an ER nurse, it instantly costs $15. Unbelievably, even a mother holding her newborn baby to her chest right after labor is itemized by the accounting system on the bill under the beautiful name of skin-to-skin contact for a fee of $39. Everything you touch, everything you use, is nickeled and dimed. But hey, the true goldmine that helps your empire siphon the wealth of patients lies in a ruthless concept called the facility fee. It operates exactly like the cover charge of a VIP nightclub in Las Vegas, only hundreds of times more expensive. Your customers can be billed simply for their presence. Imagine a panicked patient walking through the emergency room, ER, doors, huddling in the waiting chairs for 3 hours. They never see a single doctor, don't even get their blood pressure checked, and decide to leave because the wait is too long. Boom! A few weeks later, a bill for $2,500 appears in their mailbox. They are charged simply for the crime of daring to step onto your turf and breathing the HEPA-filtered air. When the pain strikes, customers blindly sign every financial responsibility waiver without bothering to read the terms. They are immersed in a labyrinth of debt without even knowing it. Ultimately, monopolizing the pricing power when people are panicking and at their most vulnerable is the brutal house edge that every Wall Street mogul craves. Siphoning money from miserable patients with a delusional pricing matrix is one thing, but if you want to push your hospital's valuation into the billions, you can't just pluck feathers from an exhausted middle class. The greatest cash cow, the absolute biggest spender your empire must target, is the federal government through national healthcare programs like Medicare and Medicaid. And this is exactly when the most ruthless machine in your hospital is activated: the Revenue Cycle Management, RCM, division. In ordinary medical facilities, the intensive care unit might be the heart, but in your for-profit empire, the RCM department is the lung pumping oxygen into the entire financial system. There is not a single doctor or stethoscope in sight here. It is filled with hundreds of savvy medical coders. Their sole mission is to pore over every page of medical records and translate them into billing codes under the ICD-10 system to extract money from the government. Indeed, this is a dark art known as upcoding. The way it operates is chillingly smooth. Imagine a 70-year-old man using Medicare who gets admitted for a persistent cough. If the doctor honestly records it as routine bronchitis, the government will only send you a check for around $5,000. That payout is far too cheap. Certainly not enough to cover the rent for the real estate trust strangling you. Instead, through the molding hands of the RCM team, coders will pressure doctors to clarify a few clinical details. With just a few ambiguous symptoms, the initial cough is instantly recoded into acute pneumonia with a severe risk of respiratory failure. Boom! The government payout immediately jumps to $25,000. Unbelievably, with just a few keystrokes, you just pocketed an extra $20,000 in pure cash flow without having to dispense a single extra antibiotic or pay for another hour of a nurse's night shift. This is the trump card that generates massive profit margins out of thin air. Of course, this game of milking the national budget isn't without its risks. Sometimes the Department of Justice, DOJ, will breathe down your neck and slap you with a multi-million-dollar fine for medical billing fraud. But honestly, looking at the year-end balance sheet, that legal fine is merely considered a cheap cost of doing business compared to the billions in profit margins you have quietly drained from American taxpayers. Now, after inflating revenue with a delusional pricing matrix and upcoding tricks, your empire still faces a massive boulder, blocking the path to maximum profit. That is variable costs, and more specifically, human beings. In any business model, personnel is always the black hole that consumes the most cash. But in a hospital, the workforce accounts for up to 50% to 60% of total operating expenses. Naturally, you cannot cut the compensation of top-tier surgeons because they are living money-printing machines. the magnets drawing patients to your facility. So where does the board of directors' grim reaper scythe swing? Spot on. The registered nurses, RNs, and medical support staff. Indeed, the financial report sculpting formula of investment fund moguls is chillingly cold. Instead of maintaining the golden ratio of 1 nurse to 2 patients, 1:2, in the emergency room, you order a suffocating squeeze on staffing quotas. You force a single nurse to shoulder 6 or even 8 patients simultaneously. Let's do some basic math. By firing existing staff or freezing new hires, you save an average salary of $85,000 a year per nursing position. Multiply that figure by hundreds of individuals across the entire chain of medical facilities, and you just conjured tens of millions of dollars flowing directly into the net profit column without having to invent any groundbreaking business strategy. But hey, you will definitely ask yourself, if nurses are squeezed to the point of exhaustion, accidentally administer the wrong medication, or fail to perform CPR in time causing a patient to die, what then? Won't the litigation risks crush the hospital and wash away all the gains? Welcome to the most ruthless rule of American capitalism. Your financial management suite has already meticulously calculated this life or death equation using mathematical models. The cost of purchasing massive malpractice insurance policies and paying out-of-court settlements for wrongful death lawsuits is, in reality, still much cheaper than maintaining a large and well-rested nursing staff. Ultimately, human life and the risk of medical errors have been factored into an Excel spreadsheet by the elite, then converted into an acceptable form of business wear and tear. As long as the risk payout remains lower than the massive cash saved from strangling the labor force, this bloody machine will continue to crush both staff and patients to ensure dividends are paid on time to shareholders. The theory so far might seem ruthless, but don't think it's just a script on paper. Let me take you through one of the most classic and bloodiest collapses in modern medical history, a perfect testament to all the financial tricks we've just dissected. Welcome to the foretold death of Steward Health Care. Indeed, the story began in 2010 when the private equity giant named Cerberus Capital Management acquired a debt-ridden Catholic hospital system in Massachusetts. They rebranded it as Steward Health Care and promised to deliver a miracle of financial management. But there was no miracle in sight. Cerberus immediately pulled out the zero-down playbook and put it into practice. They strictly applied the sale-leaseback tactic, selling off the entire land and buildings of these hospitals to the Real Estate Investment Trust Medical Properties Trust, MPT, in exchange for billions of dollars in cash. Once the cash was secured, Cerberus began gutting the system by paying out massive dividends to themselves. After a decade of squeezing the cash flow dry, by 2020, this investment fund officially washed its hands and exited, pocketing a staggering net profit of $800 million. They walked away to the cheers of Wall Street shareholders, leaving behind a hollow shell burdened with billions of dollars in rent and debt. But hey, the real tragedy didn't lie in the numbers on the financial reports. It lay in the emergency rooms. Because the entire cash flow had been siphoned off to pay real estate rent to MPT, Steward's 31 hospitals across the U.S. were left gasping for air. They didn't have the money to pay medical supply vendors. Unbelievably, this destitution led to tragic, systemic deaths. A glaring example is the shocking incident at St. Elizabeth's Hospital in Boston, where a young mother bled to death right after childbirth. The reason? The most basic embolization coil, a device used to stop bleeding, had been repossessed by the vendor weeks prior simply because the hospital refused to pay its bills. A human life was lost because the system lacked a few $1,000s, while former board members were sipping champagne on their yachts. Ultimately, by mid-2024, Steward Health Care officially filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, pushing thousands of nurses into unemployment and throwing the healthcare systems of several states into crisis. This collapse is the most naked verdict on the rules of capitalism. Financial moguls take the real cash out and walk away safely behind a corporate shield, leaving all the bad debt, real estate liabilities, and the pools of blood on the operating room floor for the hospital itself and American taxpayers to clean up. All the tricks of siphoning patients and squeezing nurses that we just dissected might make you seem like the absolute ruler. But hey, don't get smug just yet. You are not at the top of the food chain in this American healthcare empire. The entities holding the true power of life and death over your cash flow are the giant health insurance conglomerates like United Healthcare, Cigna, or Aetna. This is your real, most naked and brutal deathmatch. When you hold up your Chargemaster and scream $500 for a saline bag, the insurance companies don't just obediently open their wallets. They drag your executive board into bloody closed-door contract negotiations. The game of Russian roulette here is called in-network versus out-of-network. If you refuse to heavily discount your prices and accept massive markdowns that can reach up to 60% for the insurer, they will ruthlessly cross your hospital's name off their partner list. What does this mean? Tens of thousands of patients holding United Healthcare cards in that region will make a U-turn to your rival hospitals, because if they step into your facility, they will have to pay the entire bill out of pocket. The liquidity risk is absolutely terrifying. Your cash flow can completely evaporate in the blink of an eye over a single signature of refusal. Indeed, even if you bite the bullet and take a loss to sign the in-network contract, they still have another ultimate weapon to torture your revenue cycle management, RCM, system, the denied claims rate. Using automated AI algorithms to scan records, insurers can deny mass payments for expensive surgical bills over a single typo by a medical staffer, or because they use the excuse that the surgery was not medically necessary. Unbelievably, you have already finished operating on the patient, medical supplies have been consumed, nurses have been paid, but the reimbursement from the insurance is stalled for up to 6 months or bluntly rejected. That on-paper revenue immediately morphs into bad debt, and when the cash flow is jammed, that mountain of rent debt from your old sale-leaseback trick will return to strangle you. Ultimately, in this arena, the hospital and the insurance company are like two giants holding scalpels to each other's throats, competing to see whose cash flow bleeds out first. So we have reached the end of the road in this life-or-death gamble. Indeed, after navigating through financial magic tricks, from flipping real estate and suffocating staff to fighting bloody wars with the insurance industry, it is time to show our hands and calculate the true return on investment, ROI, of this entire model. In the most optimistic scenario, every gear in your machine meshes perfectly. You acquire the hospital with borrowed money, gut hundreds of millions of dollars in pure cash through the sale-leaseback maneuver, and then use the Chargemaster matrix and upcoding tricks to pump up your on-paper profits. After about 5 to 7 years of squeezing this facility dry, you dress it up in a flashy coat and flip it to a more naive private equity fund, or dump it onto the stock market. Unbelievably, the fat profit margins that Wall Street elites rake in during this cycle usually land somewhere between 300% and 400%. You pocket billions of dollars, buy another mansion in the Hamptons, and wash your hands clean, exiting without leaving a single trace. But hey, the cutthroat market isn't always paved with roses. Let's look at the worst-case scenario. Your cash flow is strangled by insurance conglomerates. The hospital defaults on its real estate obligations and cannot afford the massive rent. Even worse, federal agents from the Department of Justice, DOJ, kick down the doors with arrest warrants over blatant evidence of Medicare budget fraud. At this very moment, the most ruthless brilliance of American law begins to shine. The legal entity of that hospital will file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Many mistakenly believe bankruptcy means losing everything and being sold for scrap at an auction, but Chapter 11 is actually a VIP exit exclusively reserved for the capitalists. The moment the petition is filed, the court activates a magical legal shield known as an automatic stay, forbidding all banks or vendors from touching the hospital. Under this protection, the hospital remains open for business, and executives still collect their multi-million-dollar salaries, yet the court empowers them to tear up nurses' union contracts and force medical supply vendors to swallow massive losses on unpaid debts. Most importantly, thanks to limited liability, this entire colossal mess of debt is permanently attached only to the hollow shell named the hospital. Individual shareholders and your investment fund are completely off the hook. The massive cash from the land sale and the dividends you pocketed years ago remain quietly and absolutely safe in your vaults. Ultimately, The final verdict for the for-profit hospital empire in America exposes a brutal truth. Human health in this superpower is absolutely not a fundamental human right. It is the most coldly priced commodity. Hospital beds are essentially just cash flow generating machines. Doctors are high-end production tools, and patients are the literal gold mines for debt extraction. You might be proud of owning the biggest hospital in the state, but never mistakenly believe that you are in the business of life. Indeed, you are in the business of human desperation, and in that bloody arena, the house edge will forever belong to those holding the capital.